Hello everyone and welcome back to my weekly podcast on the history of Georgian art. Today I'm going to talk to you about the Georgian traditional Cloisonné enamel. This is another area in Georgian art history which counts numerous examples and masterpieces of exquisite and fine works. And it displays great taste and great work of our ancestors. Georgian cloisonné, more than any other field in art, in medieval art, reveals connection, great close ties with Byzantine artistic legacy. Obviously, it came from Byzantium initially, but just like any other type of art, as I already mentioned in other, when we talked about Georgian reliefs, architecture, and many other things, I told you that Georgians they are very good at managing to make experience of others their own and translate it in their own terms, so that it enables them later to make their own contribution to the art of the Christian world. Enamel works in Georgia were found in different churches and monasteries, and now most of them are displayed in national treasure of the Georgian National Museum. First of all, let me tell you about the materials and techniques used in Georgian enamel and the way it was made as we know it. Cloisonné art differs from other enamel traditions because it uses wires. Now, first of all, a composition is drawn on a board or a piece of metal, which usually in Georgian tradition it used to be either gold or silver or alloy of gold and silver, which is called electrum. And after the picture was drawn, these little teeny tiny wires, which is literally as thin as hair, very, very thin and flat, they were shaped according to these lines, these little teeny tiny lines, and so that they covered all the lines in the composition. Then powdered glass of different colors was applied with tweezers between these lines. And it requires great accuracy and meticulous work. It has to be done very, very carefully because most of these works are very, very small, very tiny, so that enamel in the past was even considered as belonging to minor arts because of its smaller size, not because of its meaning and importance, but because they were very, very small. So when we speak nowadays, art historians tend to look at these works and say that, oh, these lines are not very accurate, these lines are a bit not coinciding with what it is supposed to be. But just imagine working on this very, very little teeny tiny wire. It is incredibly hard and very, very, very demanding work. So after this powdered glass was applied between these lines, the piece was put in a special kiln, which heats up enormously, and after a set time, which is set differently for different colors, the piece is taken out from the kiln, cooled, rinsed in cold water, polished, and then it is ready to use. These pieces were used for different, let's say, purposes. Well, Usually, because of their small size, they were quite handy for being incorporated in decorative systems, like, for example, embellishing icons which were made with repoussé art, and they were leaving small circular shapes for putting these medallions, enameled medallions in them. So they were making this kind of decoration for icons, or sometimes they were used as, they were made as inculpia, which were meant as like pendants for bishops to wear, or sometimes they were banarias with the image of the Mother of God, also for bishops to wear. Like, for example, let's begin from the timeline of the development when this developed enamel art in Georgia usually is set between 8th to 15th centuries in Georgia. The earliest ones that we have look like this. I want to cover this so not to distract your attention. Now, this is Martvili and Colpium here on top. As you see, it is a triptych. It has the sides made with repoussé metalwork, and the middle part is enameled. As you see, the whole area was enameled. Well, it's damaged now, and the figure of Jesus is missing there. But even the background was enameled. It's very important because it's typical for earlier period. And I'll tell you what happened afterwards. Well, this is also from the same time here. This is quadrifolium from Martvili again. And here you see the crucifixion here. Can you see that? Is it visible in the camera? And what's interesting, one of the things that is interesting in this composition is that there is a blessing hand from above in the composition of the crucifixion, which is very, very unusual and maybe even not common, but not even existent anywhere else. It's very unusual thing, so it's kind of different other traditions. Now, in the 10th century, there is a different type of cloison art, which also came from Byzantium, and it is called sunk Cloisonné, meaning that background is left as it is, like this gold plate is left untouched as a background. And the area which was supposed to be enameled, it was hammered down so that it made a place for inlay. Kind of, it was a bit lowered. And this background looks like it's a kind of, it gives a neutral gold background, which is quite typical in iconography too. But here it's just left untouched. It's not enameled, which is quite clever too. Here, the this is a cross of Quirique. This is on the icon of Jajuli. If you remember, we talked about it when we spoke about the repoussé art, and I told you that this Jajuli icon is also embellished with lots of enamels, and one of them is here, this cross, which is called the King Quirique's cross, because there is an inscription which says, "God magnify the King Quirique." So that's the reason why it is called that. But you see here, the figure of Jesus is surrounded with 4 evangelists. And the same technique is used here again, sunk enamel, and it's surrounded with pearls, with a line of pearls, very beautifully. And if you can see these details of repoussé art, which I failed to show you last time, it's absolutely marvelous, the way these lines are hammered from the back, from the reverse side. It's quite marvelous work. Now, let's go on a bit further later. No, it's not later, actually, it's still here. Hachuli triptych, which I already showed you, but now I want to show you how enamels are located on. They are basically incorporated in the system of decoration. There are lots of enamel medallions all over this place, which are not really attracting too much attention unless you go very close and look at them. But the middle, the face and hands of the Mother of God were made with enamel technique, with this Cloisonné enamel. Well, the rest of it used to be repoussé metal work, but it's gone now because it was made of gold and somebody stole it. So the use of enamel medallions like this, incorporating them in the system of decoration, was quite common on other icons too, not just this Hachuli icon. I can show you a few of them. If you look here, there are saints, Saint George, Saint Demetrios. Here is Agios Theodoros, which is actually, this inscription is in Greek, which is very interesting because sometimes the inscriptions are made in Georgian and the other times they are made in Greek. But they are still belong to the same Georgian master. And the other saints here, and the interesting thing, especially at the face of Saint Luke here, if you can see, this way, they are almost portraits. Well, what happened here is that, if you remember, I told you that in Georgian sculpture, in relief sculpture and in painting, in icon painting and in fresco painting, I told you that the interest towards expressing humanity, let's say, was basically expressed through giving volume to figures, like making them voluminous, making them like real, kind of shaping them as if they were three-dimensional, as it were. But here, enamel technique does not allow this, because when the glass powder is put with tweezers, you can't really make shades and different kind of grades of color. It's impossible. You just have to put a single color in every segment between lines. You can't do this shaping and modeling of the figure. So it is likely that because of this, artists managed to find the other way of expressing humanity, which they achieved by giving these expressions on faces. These faces are very expressive, very portraiture-like, very portraitic. So this interest to emotions, even expressing emotions on faces, it tells us that in this period, from the 12th century onwards, it was this kind of tendency towards humanism, not in the same way as it was done in the West during Renaissance, but there was some kind of interest towards human presence or human cooperation with God, let's say, kind of human as being important, not just being a kind of passive acceptor of divine grace, but as participator in God's work. So human being was an important figure. Sorry, bookmarks are not being kind to me. Sorry about this. Yes, and here, the later period. Now, on the top one here, the top composition, which is a Dormition of the Mother of God, and it is from the 13th century. Now here also this emotional kind of expression is quite obvious, and this humanity of personhood of figures is also very kind of highlighted, emphasized. And the composition itself is quite complex. It's not that simple anymore. It's not just kind of frontal representation. They are moving. Some of them are standing from different angles. It's a very, very interesting composition if you look very carefully. And this Saint George, which is 15th century, it also kind of is, well, they say that it doesn't give a very accurate kind of shapes of this linear presentation, but again, you know, it's very difficult, so we have to be understanding about this accuracy of lines, and I cannot really see what's wrong with lines anyway. And this is more like a kind of icon rather than just being used for decorative purposes or embellishing something else. It's obviously an icon of St. George. And the 15th century is the last time when Cloisonné enamel is made in Georgia. Well, I also wanted to show you another one, which is a bit earlier again, the 13th century one, and it's also this kind of emotional expression and the complexity of composition. It's very interesting. This is a Pentecost, the composition of Pentecost. This is part of the series. The other one, there are, I think, 4 of them, of the feasts, great feasts. And they are also kind of representative as icons, and they are larger size, larger than the others we saw earlier. Now, what happened after 15th century, we don't know. There are no remaining pieces that we know about, but it's in the 20th century, the end of the 20th century, our patriarch, Catholicos patriarch, Ilya II, decided to revive this tradition of enamel, Cloisonné enamel in Georgia, and he began several workshops. Well, I can show you just 2 of them here, which are still for liturgical use. There is a workshop in the convent in Poga, in Javakheti region, which has a very serious kind of workshop studio there. And it was launched by David Gagabadze, who is the grandson of the famous great artist David Gagabadze with the same name. And they are making mostly liturgical pieces, well, pieces for liturgical use. And it's called Pogani, the workshop. It's very, very interesting. Like, I remember one of them was Patriarch's mitre, this big hat with pieces of enameled pieces attached to it all over the... we are going to show it to you. And also there are other modern enamel masters, artists, like a friend of mine, I will say, Irina Makhviladze. She makes both. She makes icons, well, kind of like pendant icons, which are meant for wearing as a jewelry, but nevertheless, they are still icons, and they are with the same kind of filled with the same spirit, very portraiture-like, very portraitic, very expressive, and really kind of very lively. You can even kind of look at them as in a kind of, this is kind of relate to them rather than just, just look at them as decorations. But the interesting thing is that in modern times, in our contemporary times, in Georgia, enamel work, cloisonné enamel, developed more in terms of jewelry. There are absolutely amazing pieces of jewelry made by contemporary artists, like I remember, I can tell you the names, which are again Irina Makhweladze. She makes very, very nice pieces of jewelry, and Nino Burgadze, Hatuna Roinishvili. Well, there are lots of others, and I'm afraid to miss some of them out, and it won't be a good idea. But the interesting thing about them is that it seems like this traditional spirit somehow moved into these compositions, which are very trendy nowadays. Georgians wear them, and well, they do have this kind of awareness that basically they are wearing their tradition. It's not just a nice piece of jewelry, but it's their roots that they are wearing with them. So please do come to Georgia, admire these cloisonné enamel works, and you can even have some jewelry to take with you. So if you enjoyed my podcast, please don't forget to press like and subscribe. Thank you for watching. Bye for now.